Nigel Farage, your opportunity now to respond to that in particular, and no doubt recent comments from the government.
Well, thank you very much indeed. And one or two of you may have read an alternative CV for me that appeared this morning in the Irish Independent, courtesy of Dick Roche, who, amongst other things, apparently I come from the same gene pool, political gene pool, as the neo-fascists, and I represent an extremist nationalist party. Well, it just goes to show how frightened Dick Roche is of the arguments that we're trying to advance, that he has to sink into the gutter with his comments, making comments that would never be made by any British politician. I could give you the benefit of the doubt, sir, and say they were made out of ignorance, but I suspect, in fact, they were made out of malice. I'll make it absolutely clear that I represent a completely non-racist, non-sectarian, libertarian party. Yes, we believe in free markets. Yes, we believe in independence. But we've never had any association with those people, and we jolly well never would. And because of that, the British people increasingly do trust us, which is why we came second in the European elections in Britain. But of course, he was intending to divert me, and he has, because I've wasted a minute of my speech on him, which I didn't really want to do. But of course, the reason he's done it is this is the same Dick Roche who said there is no reason to believe that large numbers of workers will wish to come. And he wrote that to the Irish Times back in 2002, and he'd much rather there was no debate about migration into Ireland and the impact it's having on this economy at a time when you have hundreds of thousands of unemployed and it's rising fast. It's classic. It's classic, I'm afraid, of the lies that you in Ireland and us in Britain and in many other countries have been told successively. You open the door with Nice, 500,000 have come, and what this treaty does, of course, is it opens the door in time to Turkey, which would give free movement of peoples to a further 80 million people. And it's an element and an aspect that should be debated in this referendum campaign. And I would also like to correct other members of the press that say that UKIP, this ghastly UKIP, are piling money. I mean, you think we're the richest party on earth, that we're piling money into this referendum campaign to help the no side. UKIP isn't involved in this. UKIP won't put a penny piece into this Irish referendum campaign. I am here to represent a group in the European Parliament, the Europe of Freedom and Democracy, representing 33 MEPs, and we're trying to do something here because we want to redress the balance. Because it seems to us we're not really having a fair democratic campaign. You know, the Broadcasting Commission here have thrown out of the window the idea that both sides should get equal time. You've got millions coming in from the European Commission. You've got hundreds of politicians from across Europe campaigning for a yes, and somehow I'm accused of interfering. The real debate here is about democracy and it's about power. And this treaty gives unlimited potential power to the European Union without there ever having to be more intergovernmental conferences, without there having to be any more referendums in the future. This, frankly, is an affront to the peoples of Ireland that you should be asked again. And Dick Roche, again, it's a subject he's been very hot on over the years, haven't you, Minister? To attempt to rerun a referendum as a means of reversing the democratic decision taken by the people would rightly be regarded as an affront. You remember that, Minister, I'm sure. The French said no, they were ignored. The Dutch said no, they were ignored. The Irish have said no, and they're being bullied into voting again. If you vote no, it will cause a referendum in Britain, and it will bring the European project to a halt, and perhaps give all of us an opportunity to consider how far this project has gone and where we want it to go. It would be a fine democratic thing for the peoples of Europe to have an opportunity to stop and debate their future. So there is a very heavy burden on Ireland. Nothing awful will happen to you if you vote no. You know, the sun will still come up in the morning. Everything will be fine. Take this opportunity. Don't trust your politicians. Give the peoples of Europe a full debate. Thank you. What's happening here is the European Union's court, the European Court of Justice, is actually taking a position of power over the European Court of Human Rights, who, of course, have administered the Convention for many decades. And just remind ourselves, Mary Lou was quite right about Article 52, that restrictions may be imposed on the exercise of fundamental rights in particular in the context of a common organisation of the market. What that means is that any one of the first 51 fundamental rights that we're given in this treaty can be altered, changed or taken away by a political court in Luxembourg, and there is nothing that any government or any court in any member state country can do to change that. So, I mean, without Article 52, you may well have an argument that this Charter of Fundamental Rights could be a beneficial thing for workers' rights and all the rest of it, but with 52 and with the ECJ now having precedent on these things over the ECHR, that argument simply isn't valid.
What happens to Ireland's position in Europe if we get a no vote?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Why should it? I mean, if Ireland votes no, it is virtually certain that the Czechs will not ratify the treaty, and it is certain that the British will get a referendum, which I would have thought, well, it's difficult to see 65, perhaps 65, 66% of Brits saying no. What happens is the whole European project is stopped in its tracks. It judders to a halt momentarily, and I'm arguing that that would be a good thing. We've been pushing on at breakneck speed. I mean, we've been legislating at such a rapid pace. It was estimated recently that in Germany, over the last decade, 84% of laws that have been made in Germany over that decade had been laws that had been made by European Union institutions and not by their own parliament. So I think that the Irish voting no would give all of us a chance to have a think, to have a say, to have a debate, and would be a very, very good thing.
Well, Nigel, does Ireland need to worry about foreign investor perception if it votes no?
I think it does. But this whole area of the economy and economic control, I thought Dick Roach's comment was interesting that, you know, many years ago you had to look to London, and you seem to be happy to swap subservience to the British for subservience to the European bank in Frankfurt. I don't see necessarily why that's a benefit. I also wonder, this whole debate about the economic storm. On the question of foreign direct investment, I used to come to Dublin a lot back in the 1990s when I had a real job and worked in the private sector, which is, I know, a very strange concept in politics these days. Nearly everybody's spent their whole life in the public sector. But I used to come here, and a lot of my friends relocated to Dublin and came to Dublin, and the big advantage of coming here then is still the big advantage of coming here now, and it is, of course, that you've got a highly competitive corporate tax base, and there have already been discussions and proposals in the European Commission to start to harmonise corporate taxes. This treaty takes us closer to harmonise corporate taxes, which is the thing that would destroy FDI into Ireland.
David,
let's just talking about democracy, David. I mean, it would be democratic to respect the fact that the French, the Dutch and the Irish voted no. What kind of democracy is it that says you voted this way, you've got it wrong, you've got to do it again? I don't call that democracy.
That it is absolutely imperative that we vote yes.
Okay,
so I think we need
I want to give
that.
Nigel Farage a quick opportunity to respond. And by the way, if people could keep their questions brief, we haven't got that long.
Well, I assume that you're a Monet professor, are you?
Pardon?
I assume that you're a Monet professor, are you?
I carry that.
Oh, wonderful. So here you are, talking about honesty and frankness. Wouldn't it have been rather better if before your question you declared an interest in this and explained to these people that you are one of the many academics throughout the universities of the European Union who is effectively paid to indoctrinate people with a certain line of thinking that we have to adopt a European... I mean, come on, you talked about let's have a bit of honesty. It's a classic symptom of where this European Union has gone wrong, that the attempt to indoctrinate children at university is... I was right, though, wasn't I? Some quick points about these renegotiations, these guarantees. They're not guarantees at all. They're clarifications. And the Minister said you'd achieved some significant changes. This treaty has not changed at all. There is no legal basis for these guarantees whatsoever. They're not worth the paper they're written on. If they were, then the treaty would have changed and the other member states would have to re-ratify.
That in all parliaments where this has been carried, it has been carried handsomely and in most cases by vast majorities.
All right.
And that's the fact.
Thank you, Minister.
Professional career politicians, 6,000 of them, millions of people vote no in referendums, and they're completely ignored. This battle really is one between the peoples of Europe and its career political class. Right. You want Lisbon because it's good for you.
My name is Enda Sherlock. I'm a business person, and I'd like to very much welcome Nigel Farage here today. He represents a brand of economic politics which many people in this country absolutely, completely believe in. Every small corner shop, every small farmer, every person involved in business at any level, those people are monuments, absolute monuments to that mentality. I'd like to point out that Dick Roche is here this evening, representing a government that has less than 17% satisfaction rating in the recent opinion poll, and that Mr Beggs represents the bloated £150,000 per annum face of Irish trade unionist partnership, so-called partnership, parasiteship negotiations. I'd first of all call on Dick Roche to retract the disgusting comments that he made in today's newspaper about Nigel Farage. It would be the same thing as me saying that Dick Roche was coming from the same gene pool as the real IRA, arguably. And I go further and say that the Irish people will hold the line and we'll say no again.